Hello, everyone. So I thought I would be active in September on Women Against Feminism things, but I've been very inactive. I have not been doing anything with respect to anti-feminism, and that is because I did the same job that I complained about not being able to get in the racism video. I kind of got the job, not fully, but I am doing the job because the person who they chose didn't show up, and she's Russian, and I don't know. So I'm doing the job. I'm still hoping to get the job. It's not a job in that it doesn't pay. It's a voluntary job, but it's still something that I want to do, and I'm very happy that I'm able to do it. And gets me in contact with the people who live around here. In contact with the community, and it's something that maybe I could use to get a job. Who knows? So it's something really good, and I'm happy about that. And so I've been doing that. That recent development, and hopefully it continues. Right. So on to Women Against Feminism. So this week, I want to podcast and blog or whatever. So this week, the highlight of not much happened with respect to feminism because I've not been doing anything. But some time ago, I've been trying to interview men who are non-feminist or who are active in the non-feminist world or the anti-feminist world. And I messaged via Facebook, I messaged Peter Wright. And so I titled this video Facing My Misconceptions About MRAs because I asked him to interview. He doesn't interview via Zoom, but he was willing to do a written interview with me, which he placed on his blog. And his blog is in the background here. And so, yeah, I'm very grateful that he allowed me to ask him all these questions and that he posted it on his website and that he's shown so much support. And, I was also surprised by his answers. And so I want to get into that, my misconceptions about MRAs. I don't know if it's fair to say that they are misconceptions because I'm not sure that one person's opinion changes my view, but I was completely surprised by his answers. It was not something that I would have expected, and I will explain why. I think a lot of people who would be viewing this video or who consider themselves anti-feminist are actually the minority of anti-feminists that exist. So if you think about anti-feminism, the actual majority of anti-feminists don't call themselves anti-feminists or think of themselves as anti-feminists, or even they just don't even think about feminism, or it's not something important to them at all, let's say. And that majority who are anti-feminists, they come, I believe, from a conservative traditional background. So the majority of conservative traditional people would lean towards anti-feminism. However, they wouldn't be so passionate about it to identify as an anti-feminist, look it up and, consume, write about it, read about it, look at videos about it, and so on. It's just a side thing, and they're not feminists. They don't consider themselves feminists because it doesn't, what feminists want doesn't match with the lifestyle that they want or live or, abide by. These would be conservatives. I generally come from that background. I consider myself a centrist because, legally, I'm very liberal. I'm pro-choice. I'm pro anything LGBTQ. I believe that LGBTQ people have suffered historically. I support things to do with minorities. I guess all of this sounds very liberal. I am, right? But if I say that I care about equality in a liberal sense, or the way in which liberals make out equality to be and stuff, then I would be lying. I feel like I'm lying. It is a lie. I might say it sometimes because, I empathize with their want for equality. So I'm like, I get it. You're a good person. You want equality, and equality is important, and we need justice. And yes, okay, I get it. You liberal, but I would be lying if I said that I really wanted that. That's not the way I view the world. It's not something that is important to me. It's I think the real world doesn't abide to those things, and it's somehow somewhat illogical and a defiance of accepting how the world is to fight for equality that can never exist. I also think it's important to fight for equality because that's a part of our human nature, to want equality, to fight for it, and to seek justice. So I'm not saying we should never seek equality. No, we should fight for equality. But I think that the liberal version of equality is impossible. It takes it too far. It's a sort of and the worst part of it, actually, the part that I don't agree, I don't have a problem with fighting for equality, but I also need to acknowledge reality, okay? And I think that the liberal version of equality, what they want, or what, it is, in order to believe in it, you have to ignore reality. And I don't like to ignore reality. I like to admit that reality exists. Okay, so how did I even get there? So that role, and he also gets married and has a bunch of kids with a woman who he takes care of, right? This is the role of the man and the role of the woman. She takes care of babies, he takes care of her. I'm not going to get into the details of working or not or anything like that. But let's say these two things exist, and men and women exist on a spectrum. So on one end, you have really feminine women who love babies and nurturing. And on the other end, you have women who absolutely hate that. They're not feminine at all. They're void of femininity. Okay, and then on one end, you have masculine men who love the idea of taking care of a woman and providing for her and being strong and all that. And then on the other end, you have men who don't like masculinity at all. They don't like that role. They think it's not them. They want a completely different role in life. They don't want to be masculine. They don't feel masculine. They're devoid of masculinity. What happens is that traditional society exists, and it has been somewhat dominant, let's say, historically, and also in present society. And of course, the people on the end who are not feminine and not masculine get upset with traditional society. So the ones who are not feminine, these women, create feminism. They hate traditional society. And then, so obviously, the ones who are ultra feminine, who fall into the traditional roles, they are naturally anti-feminist. On the male side, you would have the same thing. You would have the masculine males, they are naturally probably anti-feminist. But you have these are the normal anti-feminists. They don't talk about it. And then on the male side, those who are devoid of masculinity, let's say, who hate masculinity, they are what I would think anti-feminist. They are anti-feminist men. They are MRAs. Okay, I know that this is an extremely simplistic and probably hurtful. I don't want to hurt anybody. I don't mean to hurt. I'm just putting this out there. It's a very simplistic and maybe hurtful description of the scenario, but I'm just trying to get some of my thoughts out there. So, in my head, most MRAs most MRAs are actually liberal. They're not conservative. Most anti-feminists are conservative, but most people who identify as anti-feminist are liberal. And they have a problem with traditional masculinity and traditional femininity and so on, just in the same exact way that feminists have a problem with traditional masculinity and traditional femininity. The reason they don't come together is because the men are saying, yeah, we agree with you feminists that we don't need to have all these gender roles and stuff, but you have been demonizing us, and you don't consider that we also suffered, and you're too female-centric. So we need something that also rejects masculinity, something that is going to be male-centric and to hear our problems and reject the role that men have to play. So this is how I see MRAs, and therefore my stereotype against MRAs is that they mostly are not traditional. They call traditional women and people or whatever plantation. They call traditional women calling men back to the plantation. They hate traditional women. They don't like traditional gender roles. They don't like the traditional. And so that was my stereotype. And a big part of the reason I do not consider myself an MRA. I cannot consider myself an MRA because it would be a lie, because I am traditional. I fall on the side of the I am okay with femininity. In fact, I really like femininity. I like all the things that go along with femininity, and that's the reason, a big part of the reason, that I am not a feminist, right? So I fall within the majority of anti-feminists. However, I also understand that diversity exists and everyone has a place in life, and the minority of anti-feminists who are the ones who get more passionate because they have more to complain about, in a sense, they also deserve to have a voice. They also need to voice their problems with feminism and be anti-feminist. So my stereotype against MRAs was basically they're a bit too liberal for me. They don't like traditional society, and I can't drive with that. So I interviewed Peter Wright, and so I asked him what he thinks about traditional gender roles, and he said another tricky question, because there are a variety of traditional gender roles, each one differing somewhat in its customs and conventions. For example, in the West, we have two primary traditionalisms. The first one is highly gynocentric, prioritizing the wife, woman, somewhat over the husband and children. And the second model is non-gynocentric tradition, which values gender roles on the basis that they exist as service roles within the wider family nucleus, within the wider family nexus. And this model I can get behind. So this is very interesting because I think it's really true and important to acknowledge that, even though it's a harsh thing, but it's true. What happens is that when people say the word traditional, people often get upset, and I think that traditional has a really bad name, which is unwarranted, because in my opinion, traditional, if you split traditional into two things as he did, and say one of them is gynocentric and the other one is not, let's say, then what you end up with is that actually, to me, traditionalism is equality. And that is, in a weird sense, the only type of equality. It's okay, I know that's a bit harsh, because I usually say I support egalitarians. I do. I totally support egalitarians if that's what you want to do. But traditionalism, to me, is equality that takes into consideration the differences between men and women. So it's equality, but it also considers that men and women don't actually have the same path. They are different. They go through different things. Women have periods. Women, if they are planning to be childbearing, get pregnant, give birth, probably have to breastfeed, and all these things. And therefore, you need to factor that in, and then you can have equality. There's a picture, I don't know if I can find it, with equity versus equality and so on. Where like a child is on a step, and what is equality? All of them can see the game because one needs to be propped up. So women have certain disadvantages, I think, and that needs to be compensated for in order for us to get to equality. So I don't see egalitarianism as actual equality between men and women. However, it can be, depending on the circumstances. For example, if people decide not to have kids, when people are not breastfeeding, when people have minimal kids, when there are ways where egalitarianism makes sense, but in general, men and women are different and will experience different things. And so I don't think egalitarianism could really work as a relationship model for men and women long term. It could maybe, but not long term. However, on the flip side, as he said, the idea of like putting women on a complete pedestal and trying to compensate for this perceived disadvantage by saying, oh, man should provide everything. She should not do anything. She should just be, I don't know, like, I guess a stay-at-home wife, and she just does nothing. She doesn't even have kids, but she's still a stay-at-home wife. Um, I'm not saying that someone who's a stay-at-home wife, their lifestyle is wrong. No, 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 no. I support people who do whatever they want. If you want to be a stay-at-home wife, if you want to be an egalitarian, I support it all. I think it's all good. But what I mean is that if the goal is equality, sometimes it's going to look uneven, and that's okay. And I think that traditional society is one where the goal was equality. It's just that things changed and people can no longer see that. And so when people talk about women not working as traditionalists, I think that's not actually true. Traditional women have worked and have always worked. Sometimes a lot of that work was in the home, because traditionally people lived on farms, and traditionally she did a lot of work associated to the farm and stuff that was indoors because she had children or whatever. The point is, however, it was two people working as much as they could. And that resulted in different roads because the limits of women were met before the limits of men, because women had children that kept them back. And so now, if you would like to create a traditional relationship, yeah, I think a woman would be working. She may not be working. I mean, if she has kids and stuff, she wouldn't be working as much as a man, but she would be in some way economically active. And so I see that as traditionalism, or the new traditionalism. And I don't think there's anything wrong with a woman being economically active, trying to make money, and so on. Of course, nobody thinks that. But the point is, I think that traditional just means that you compensate realistically for those disadvantages. You allow women to put children first, to have children, to put them first, to put effort into them, and whatever energy she has left after all of that can go into making money, providing, or whatever. Whereas the same. He will put his kids first in whatever way, but it might not be as physical as her path would be with respect to that. So, and that's purely because she has breasts, she's the one who gets pregnant, stuff like that. So I thought that was really interesting that he tried to make that distinction. I feel a bit bad kind of making this video because it also feels like if I'm trying to say that stay-at-home moms don't have value, or and I really don't want to say that. No, I really think staying at home is a good thing if you can afford it, and it's great for your children, and it has an immense value. But I think that it's really interesting and important to make this distinction between the types of traditionalism that we have, and that traditionalism does not really mean stay-at-home mom as we think about it, or it doesn't mean that the woman doesn't provide. That's what I want to get at. It doesn't mean that the woman doesn't provide. It doesn't matter if she stays at home or not or whatever. But as a stay-at-home mom, you, as a traditional woman, if you think of yourself as a traditionalist and you're a stay-at-home mom, which I have been for a very long time, there's nothing wrong with still trying to provide. We're trying to start an at-home business. We're trying to, these sort of things are all a part of being a traditional woman. Being economically active is traditional, and there's nothing non-traditional about that. And when people make it out to be that is not traditional, that is, as Peter Wright said, a sort of gynocentric version of traditionalism. Although it depends on your situation, because everyone's life is different, and it depends on your specific situation, how many kids you have, how is it practical for you to do anything? Is it, some stay-at-home mothers are homeschooling, these sort of things. It depends on all of that. But the point is that it should never be just a guy working his tail off and a woman not, and her relaxing. It always has to be equality. If he's working a lot, you have to be working a lot. No one can judge the structure, but the point is that equality is still something that would exist under traditionalism once it's not gynocentric. And as he said with gynocentrism being child-centered and so on, he says, yeah, but it's still given to women who don't have children. In today's society, we are still very gynocentric. Women are not even having a lot of children. Many women don't want to have children. So it is not child-centered. It is woman-centered and so on. And the point is, it was an interesting interview. I'm happy that he allowed me to interview and that he posted it, and for his support. So I'm just making this video to say, yeah, it sort of made me confront my stereotypes on MRAs, that some of them are open to traditionalism, just a non-gynocentric form of it, which is, I mean, completely fair. And to me, it's something that I think I saw as fair from really early, in that, yeah, I'm a traditionalist. I totally believe in the traditional relationship between men and women, and that's how I live. I've been a stay-at-home mom. I put my children first. I don't, do things. I consider them first, and that's my role. It's long to explain, but the point is, right? Yeah, I still think that providing is good, is a part of being a traditional woman. I've started, things from home. I've done a lot of things and always tried to be somewhat economically active because I can, and it helps the family. And I think that's a part of the traditional woman's role. I think traditionally women did that. And it doesn't mean that we should like stress out women and cause them to, they have to provide, they have to take care of kids, they have to do that, and they have to be superwoman. Absolutely not. The point is that within any given relationship, the two people just have to look at their thing and say, are you doing more than I am? Are you doing? And just try to find some sort of equal yoke, that both people are trying their best and giving their all, and not have a situation where one is killing off themselves with work and the other one is just like not. So that's the important thing, as long as you have that balance. And sometimes that balance is a woman not working. Very often it could be because, for example, it could be that she relaxes in the day, then the kids come home, and then she has to work, and she works, making food all in the night, and doing, and housework is a lot of work. And she does like food, laundry, cleaning, everything, and then maybe taking care of the children, that they do their homework, bathing, and all this, putting kids to bed. And she has all this work on her so that he can work in the day and then relax when he comes home. He doesn't have to clean, he doesn't have to cook, he doesn't have to put the kids to bed. And then to me, this is a completely equal relationship, and the woman is not working. And I think and she doesn't have to contribute at all financially because they're good. And I've lived like that at certain points in our life and relationship, where he works in the day, I got to relax more in the morning or in the middle of the day. And then from the time the kids were at home, then I have to start, in a sense, working, and I'm doing all the different things. When he comes home, he's relaxed, he doesn't have to do anything. That's been our life at certain points. It's also been, different. Sometimes I do make money, well, I have in the past, lately not. But, yeah, so it's very interesting to think about it like that, and to say, and I hope there are more MRAs who come around to the idea that, or I hope there are more MRAs who do not hate on traditionalism, and who see that traditionalism could be a form of equality. It's just that sometimes it's applied poorly. And it is always going to be applied poorly when it's a rule. Because we can't create rules for relationships, because every person's situation is different. So although to be honest, rules are very useful, because these are traditions. These are rules that, people handed down from generation to generation, to say, hey, this worked for me, maybe it works for you. So that's the point of rules. So yeah, okay, sometimes rules are useful, but you always have to remember that rules like that are meant to be broken, as long as your specific situation doesn't fit to it. So your situation will always trump any kind of tradition or rule about how you should structure your relationship. So that's it. All I wanted to say was that, yes, this week I confronted my stereotypes on MRAs, and it was interesting to hear that someone who is a quite popular MRA doesn't hate traditional relationships or so on, as long as they're not gynocentric. And that's fair, because there are a lot of people who have traditional relationships which may be unfair to men or women. Maybe that exists as well, who knows. For our society today, with the level of housework that probably exists, and it depends, of course, on the work the demand does, but then in that situation, it is fair for women to also try to contribute, or just to work as much as him, however that turns out. Yeah, I'm not sure. I feel like I'm a bit lying if I say that I think traditional relationships are all gynocentric, because I don't actually. I think that a good bit of them are fair, but I understand how someone could look at the traditional setup and say that it's gynocentric, because there's no way to control whether or not the woman does work. Does she cook? Does she clean? Does she, it's very easy to say, oh, I want a traditional relationship where I'm a stay-at-home mom, and then you don't do anything all day or night or whatever, and then he's left there working and then coming home to a messy house and having to clean still, and having to, this happens as well, and I've seen it happen sometimes. And then this is not equality. This is unfair to him. And I think men are afraid of being trapped in that situation. Whereas for the woman, when she is in a traditional relationship, she doesn't face this, because, I don't think someone can force you to cook or clean. It's not the same, well, no one can force you to provide either. I guess you could say, where the guy promises a traditional relationship and then he says, oh yeah, I'm not working. But I guess this is less likely. Anyway, it's all semantics and just an interesting thing. So what are your thoughts on this? Are there different types of traditional relationships? Are traditional relationships something good? And, are some more gynocentric than the others? Or should we just stop having what should a traditional relationship look like? Should women be working today or not?